RMC is supported by MonsterJoysticks.com. Level up your retro gaming with their joysticks featuring genuine Sanwa arcade parts. And OneClickPrint.com for your photos on canvas, acrylic, gifts and more. Local craftsmen and global delivery. In 1985, a machine that has been retrospectively crowned the first true multimedia computer was launched by Commodore, the Amiga 1000. And from that, a range of affordable home computers and professional workstations alike would spawn. But something strange would happen to Commodore in the process. While their 8-bit Commodore 64 machine took the US and the world by storm, the Amiga was far more successful in Europe, Scandinavia, and even Australia than it was in the States, which makes me wonder, what was life like as an Amiga fan across the pond? Today, we've captured some rare creatures indeed, American Amiga fans, and we're going to hear how their Amiga journey contrasts to us over here in the UK. And of course, representing the UK in the middle of our screen there is Ravi Abbott and myself. We'll begin our introductions with two gents from a YouTube channel which I absolutely love. It's the Amigos Retro Gaming Chaps. Why don't you introduce yourselves, please?
Hi, I'm John, otherwise known as Boat of Car.
I'm Aaron. Thanks for having us, Neil.
Thanks for coming on, guys. And also in the corners of our screens, we've got the Guru Meditation, starting with Bill. Why don't you introduce yourself and your channel, Bill?
I'm Bill, also known as Amiga Bill. And Anthony and I have a YouTube channel called The Guru Meditation. And I also stream over on Twitch as Amiga Bill.
Excellent. And in the other corner is Anthony, the other half of that duo. Hello, Anthony. Thank you for joining us.
Hey.
And Ravi.
Hello.
Hello, Anthony. And Ravi, where can we find you?
TheRetroHour.com every week.
Of course. If you're listening to me, no doubt you know the Retro Hour podcast. So let's start with our Amiga origin stories then. We'll go around the screen, starting with Bill. Where did it all start for you, Bill?
Well, it all started out for me in White Plains, New York, in a computer store called Software Link. White Plains is a suburban city just outside of New York City, but it's a city to itself. And there was a store there called Software Link. It was a Commodore store. And my dad and I walked in and to look at the 64, look at different Commodore computers. And, you know, there was the Amiga 500. I'd always heard about the Amiga 1000. It was kind of legendary. I used to look at the back of the video game boxes to see all the screenshots. And of course, the Amiga 1000 screenshot always looked the best. I always wanted one, but it was always a bit out of our price range. But when the 500 came out in 1987, we went over to Software Link and we saw the 500 and we were just blown away by it. And it was affordable. And my dad said, you know, this machine's amazing. We're going to go for it. So I was super lucky. My dad bought me the 500 for 1987. And the store, it was a really cool place because not only was it a Commodore store, but it was also a hub for the Commodore community in our area. So there was a user group there called Westchester Amiga User Group, and I ended up joining the club. I ended up running the club for many years, still run it now, and that's where I met my partner in crime, Anthony.
Well, that's a seamless link over to you, Anthony, then. Where did it start for you?
I ignored the Amiga for as long as possible. I was a 64 owner. I got a 128. I went to college in 1986, and I brought with me a Commodore Plus 4, which I had on my desk. I typed up papers on. And while I was in college, I had a friend who had a 64 also. And while I was in college, he got an Amiga 1000. And I bumped into him at a computer store in White Plains. Not Software Link, though. This was Computer Depot and A&S. And he told me, oh, you got to come to my house. I got this new computer. It's so awesome. And I think that weekend I drove down and I saw the 1000. And I was like, oh, man, this is great. And he's like, oh, there's an AMI Expo coming up. You should come with me. And I went down there and I'm like, you know, the kid in the candy shop. And I'm like, I want one. He's like, oh, well, you got to wait. You got to wait because there's new machines coming out. They're going to be better than this. I'm like, but I like the 1000. I want the 1000. I ended up actually from the same store Bill did, getting a 500 in 87. I still have the receipt. And it took off from there because you had the users group that met in that store, and it's where I met Bill. And
Sure.
The whole,
so you were both quite early adopters.
Insanity started rolling.
Yeah, back in 87, you were quite early adopters. Not to the 1000, because that'd been out for a couple of years, but early 500 adopters. Let's shoot down to the Amigos. How did it start for you guys?
Well, I had a Tandy. I was a Tandy boy, the Coco color computer when I was a kid, And but I knew a guy who was bootlegging Atari 8-bit software in middle school, and I was friends with him. And as we went on to high school, he started a band, the Saints of Misery. I remember the name of the band. And I used to go to his house. He used to live with his older brother, and they were really into music and electronica and stuff like that. And I kept seeing the Amiga back there, and he had just loads of software, and he did all kinds of musical stuff with it. And it was on my radar, but I thought, well, I saw what it did. It crushed the PC I was using at the time. But I was like, well, you downplay it because you don't want your thing to look like crap. But a few years later, a buddy of mine approached me. He's like, listen, I need some laundry money. I need some cash. I'm looking to sell something. And I know you are into computers. I've got this Amiga 1000 here. And I was like, I remembered, I was like, the Amiga, man, this was a pretty cool computer. This is about 88. I had some bucks. So I ended up buying one. And the rest is history. I've had some sort of Amiga ever since. I've sold and bought many, many Amigas over the years, but every one of them have been secondhand. I've never bought anything out of a store except software because there were only a couple of stores here for a few years and they were gone. And then eventually the Boatster here, I introduced him to the Amiga. He was a super late adapter. I showed you the Amiga about 2013, something like that. And so,
okay.
And the rest of that is history. So Boat was a believer like that.
So Boat, what machine were you using back in sort of 87, 88 then?
Well, you got to remember that in 1987, I was 6 years old.
Oh, okay.
So I was legitimately too young, really, to enjoy the Amiga in its heyday. Oh, I don't want to say that. I was using an Atari 8-bit all the way up until the early 90s. That was my family's computer of choice. But I was of the generation that sort of came of age with the rise of consoles. And unless you were really in a group where there were other people that were into computers, like none of my friends at school had computers. They might have had a PC that they used to do schoolwork or something. But as far as gaming goes, it was all consoles all the time. So I didn't even realize the existence of the platforms like the Amiga until I was really in high school, and I got more into the retro collecting scene, and I never saw or used an Amiga in real life until about 2013.
Sure. Okay. So just checking around again. Bill, were you an Amiga 500, weren't you? Anthony was a 500.
Yep.
I was a 500.
Yeah, 500
as well.
in 1987.
Yeah, I was a 500. I was a bit later. I was about 88, 89, I think. I got my 500. But Ravi, you were playing with the big boys, weren't you? You weren't using these childish wedge-shaped Amigas back in the day.
Well, it was my dad worked in the creative industry, so basically they'd use Amiga to do creative things, and my parents really didn't like me playing games on computers. Said, if you have a computer, it must be creative. So I ended up getting into that, programming, playing on it, and going to the Amiga shows in London. But this was very late. I'd say this was 92, 93 in the Amiga's life. So it's kind of dying, but there was still a scene. But I kind of wanted it to continue, but it just dropped off. But I kept going, kept the faith.
Yeah. So is your experience typical in the US, guys, of a 500? Was that the more popular system, the Amiga 500, or were the big box Amigas a bit more popular over there?
Well, 500 was certainly popular if you were, I scraped up the money myself from money my parents were giving me to buy food at college. I was scraping up to buy a 500. But I actually got off the 500 reasonably quick because before graduation, they had a student discount on the 2000. So I moved up to the 2000, and then I sold my 500 to get an accelerator. So, but yeah, the 500 was definitely pretty popular.
The 500 was extremely popular, best-selling Amiga of all time. But here in the States, things were a little bit different because we had something called the Video Toaster that came out a bit later. And the Video Toaster is kind of a legendary piece of equipment for the Amiga, and it only works in the big box Amigas like the 2000 and the 4000. And the thing with the toaster is, like, when you mention Amiga to people today, they don't really quite remember Amiga, but they say, Amiga? Oh, you mean like the Video Toaster? And it's like, yeah, the Video Toaster. That's kind of what it's known for today. So the 500 was extremely popular, but then Amigas like the 2000 and the 4000 were really popular in the professional world because TV stations would have a 2000 and 4000 with a toaster in it, public access. You never know where you're going to find a toaster in some sort of TV station. So I would say the 2000 and 4000, the big box ones, were popular because of the toaster.
Yeah, and I think the toaster, Ravi, you've got some experience with the toaster, haven't you? I think it's a NTSC region only device, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's never available in PAL. There was a way of using a time-based corrector which would not have it at broadcast quality. So kind of what people wanted. I think the Americans got the toaster dream.
I actually saw in the basement of Palace Productions in Norwalk, Connecticut, when I was working for a TV channel. We were doing our editing out of there. There was a Video Toaster 4000 box up on top of one of their shelves. You never knew where you'd find them. But yeah, if you had a wedge Amiga, you loved your Amiga, but you looked at those big boxes with envy all the time.
And being that a lot of public access channels use the video toaster, there'd be plenty of times when you're surfing through the channels at home and then all of a sudden you'd see a Guru Meditation up, and it was awesome because their toaster crashed. It was wonderful.
Yeah, see, we wouldn't have had that because we were just restricted to about 4 channels then. We didn't have public access TV, did we, Ravi? We didn't have satellite TV.
No, and I think a lot of the stuff we use Scala. Scala seemed to be really popular in Europe for displaying on signs, train stations. So you might get a Guru if you go to a European train station and see some of the timetables.
Well, yeah. In the US also, the Amiga was used for the preview channel that gave you the scrolling guide. So you'd sometimes see it on that too.
Until pretty recently too. I mean, in the last 10 years, those were still in use on several TV stations with the preview channel. So that's where you'd see it most of all. And occasionally it would crash.
Yeah. So the big thing over here with the Amiga 500 was the bundles, the Batman pack, the Cartoon Classics pack, all of these things. Did you have those over there? Was that a big thing?
To be honest, I have no idea if we did. I bought a 500. There was no such thing as a bundle.
Yeah, the stores I went to, I never saw any. My friends had 500s, a couple of my buddies, and they just came straight up in the box. There was no extra stuff at all. So I don't think I ever saw any bundles anywhere in the States. That much said, I bought a bunch of Amiga stuff a couple of years ago, and it came with a bundled box that was all chewed up. So I guess they had some released, but I never saw any.
Yeah, because that was it.
Same here. I never saw the bundles.
Yeah, the bundles were a big thing over here, weren't they, Ravi?
Yeah, David Pleasance kind of implemented them in Commodore, so maybe later on they sent him to America, and that's why we might have had the bundles later. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he mentions that in his book that he was brought over to the States to help out with sales here, and he brought the bundles over. But by then, I think, there were very few stores here that carried them that I'd even see them in a store. So, yeah, I wouldn't have known where to get one. But I already had my machine, so it didn't matter to me.
So you mentioned stores there. What was it like then in a typical US computer store at around about that time when the 500 was out? Was the 500 at the front of the store in the window? Were they really pushing it, or was it sort of tucked away in the back of the store somewhere? Or was it even in the store?
Well, I think you had different types of stores.
Yeah.
The store I went to and I frequented with Anthony was called Software Link, and it was a Commodore only store.
Right, okay.
So the 500 was front and center right there in the window. It was pretty incredible, and you could see the 64. Unfortunately, eventually getting pushed to the back, but it was a Commodore only store. Then we also had other stores that were like IBM specific. So obviously, when we went in there, they had PC Juniors on display and whatnot. But I never really went in there much. So there were a lot of stores that were computer brand specific, and then there were general stores that carried a variety of computers. And they were, I didn't frequent those as much because I was really the Commodore guy. But so it depended like what type of store you went into. But here, obviously, Amiga was not as popular as the other computers. It wasn't as popular as, PC or Mac, because everyone had Macs in the school and everyone had PCs at work. So Amiga was definitely, more underground. It was on the fringe. It was for all those crazy artist types.
Yeah. I can't remember any system-specific stores. I'm sure there must have been some in the UK, Ravi, but we had high street stores which had such a mixture of machines. At the end of the 80s, you had the tail end of the ZX Spectrums, the Amstrads, the beige box PCs, the Atari ST, and the Amiga. And the Amiga in its heyday was pushed pretty hard in those stores. It was always on the
Yeah.
front.
I think there was so many machines that there was kind of a fight for space on the shelves because there was all these different British computers. But Amiga did have a big presence to the point that you'd have like Amiga PC and some consoles. But that was mainly when Psygnosis did like beautiful box stuff. They'd be all out. Probably be 30 of those. And yeah.
I do know Anthony and I have a mutual friend who worked at a computer store that was a general computer store, and he was pressured to push the Apple II GS over the Amiga. He got a lot of pressure to do that.
Well, that
So
was
I'm
where
not sure.
that was where I met him again. And yeah, they had the 1000 and the 2GS at the front of the store next to each other. But yeah, he complains a lot about that. Yeah, what did he say that they said, Bill? That the owner of the store?
Yeah, I don't remember. No, they pressured him a lot to push the GS, and he received like incentives if he sold the GS over the Amiga. So they pushed really hard for the Apple computer, not the Amiga, unfortunately. But he was a huge Amiga fan. He hated the GS.
We also had the Escom stores in the UK, and when they bought Amiga, all the Amiga guys went into there and just threw a shelf, at the back. They weren't prominent at all.
We had a one local store here in the Valley, amazingly, in the middle of West Virginia, that sold nothing but Amigas. It didn't last long. I think they started up about. That's where all my friends bought Amigas. But in fact, before I did, when I say all, I mean 2 or 3 of my friends. And this place is where the only place we knew about. Then we ended up finding another place in Charleston, West Virginia, about 30 minutes from here, that had some Amiga stuff. But I mean, I'm talking the shelf life of Amiga. I see more Amiga stuff at the Hillbilly Flea Market today than I did back in when it was out. Just stuff that's just someone's dug up out of a basement because it was super duper limited. It was hard to find anything here. Like I didn't know there were other models of Amiga for a long time. I didn't know anything about the European scene, or it was big in Europe. We didn't know nothing. There was no internet. You're out in the sticks. So we just saw it. It looked cool. We bought whatever they had in the store, and that was pretty much all we knew about it.
Yeah, we were so disconnected back then. If you weren't part of a user group, and we'll come on to Bill's user group soon, if you didn't have friends that had Amigas, you just didn't know really what was possible. Or, it was a very slow process figuring it out without friends to show you. Back in the day, I never saw an Amiga with a hard drive. That's only a more recent thing that I've got to play with. I had my 2 disk drives. I went as far as having an A570 CD drive at one point because it was in the bargain bin. So I got it when it was cheap. But yeah, I never saw a hard drive. And it blew my mind when I saw one around, it must have been 2003, 2004 when I actually saw a hard drive on an Amiga. But in terms of getting your Amiga news, keeping up to date with things, I think the big magazine for me over here was Amiga Format. Did that travel over to there? Did you get that, or did you have your own publications over there?
We had our own. We had Amazing. Was it? I can never AC. Yeah, Amazing Computing and Amiga World were the 2 big ones when I first got into it. It was later on when the U.S. publications died off, when we started eagerly buying your expensive European magazines that don't fit right on the shelf because they're kind of a little bit too tall.
Those were the best magazines, though. Amiga World, I never liked because I was a game guy. I wanted nothing but games, and so Amiga Format and Amiga Power, I'd see those. If you go to the newsstand, I guess does newsstand still exist? Even I don't know if it exists anymore.
Oh yeah, you go down to the mall, to the bookstore.
Yeah, but I used to go down and they'd have the discs on them. And then it was so awesome because that stuff, like, I don't know any computer magazines. Do you remember any American magazines that came with discs at the time? I mean,
no, the cover disc was I think a European phenomenon mostly.
I mean, I love those, and I'd take them home. Now, of course, we get to play everything with the screen slid down. It didn't matter. It was still getting because if it wasn't for the European magazines, that's where I first found out that there was a ton of stuff out for the Amiga that I'd never heard of, and so that made it a lot more fun. But the American magazines for Amiga, I didn't like them.
I've never heard of those American magazines that you mentioned, but I'm surprised to hear that cover discs weren't a thing, because that was the whole reason that I bought a magazine most of the time. I'd buy 2 or 3 magazines
I remember
a month.
when I first started getting Retro Gamer in like 2003 or 2004. I was like, man, this thing comes with a cover disc, because if you remember, Retro Gamer, before it got sold to its current publisher in the first couple of years, it was with a different publisher, and they actually put a cover disc on the front of it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I get like a piece of software with this magazine? That's sweet. And then I realized later on that that's a throwback to like every European gaming magazine.
Yeah, I mean, there was the great sort of cover tape wars back in the ZX Spectrum days, where they'd put 2, I think they may have even once put 3 cassette tapes on the front of a magazine to try and outdo
Oh my
each
gosh.
other. That's just crazy.
Even before that, they had vinyl discs that they would print, like Mojo magazine or Viz comedy vinyl, which like on wavy floppy vinyl. Quite cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So through these magazines or through any other way, we'll come over to you, Bill. Were you aware of the Amiga scene outside of the US? Did you know anything about that?
I was definitely aware of the Amiga scene outside the US, but it was limited. Like, I knew it existed, and I knew you guys did like all these crazy demo scene stuff, but I didn't really understand back then, which I absolutely love now. But there was a big disconnect, and most of the online things I do with my Amiga were more local to the US. I would dial into like local BBSs, and I would use a service called like PeopleLink and another one called CompuServe, but I ran into mostly Americans on those places. So I wasn't very connected to the European scene at all. I would just learn about it also by the cracktros.
Okay.
A lot of the cracktros, came from Europe, and that was my small connection to the Amiga scene in Europe. But I had no idea like what it was like over there. It was definitely much more regional. I didn't even really know what it was like in California. I knew what the scene was like here in New York, but it was much more localized back then.
And was piracy as big a thing over in the US with the Amiga software? Did you have boxes and boxes of pirated discs?
Oh yeah. Piracy was big here. We used to use Marauder and Xcopy, and it was like trading baseball cards. I would have some friends in the neighborhood, and we're like, oh, I'll trade you this game for that game, and we got to break the copy protection on this one. So yeah, it was a big deal. We didn't do it as much in the user group because we met at a computer store. So it would be, pretty disrespectful to be pirating games in the computer store. And that's actually one of the reasons why some of the folks left, before I took over the club, because there was a little bit of like piracy going on in the basement, and it wasn't cool to do that in someone's store,
Yeah, I think Ravi, you had a store that you used to go to that didn't care quite so much about piracy, did they?
They promoted it. This was kind of when the legitimate suppliers of Amigas disappeared. The pirates took over. A lot of them had small, dodgy, independent shops. But I'd say we wouldn't use Xcopy because quite a lot of the stuff we get would be crack before. So it'd be who can get the one with the best crack on it. But yeah, they used to distribute it everywhere up to the time of the PlayStation. They were still doing pirate Amiga games absolutely everywhere. Even some of the late CD titles was pretty ridiculous. I think I had like one piece of original software.
You had to pirate. I mean, you didn't have to. That's not fair. But you almost had to pirate software in the U.S. because it was so unbelievably difficult to obtain legal software. Unless you mailed for it, you'd have to, mail overseas for it. I mean, I never saw hardly anything locally except for those 2 stores, and when they were gone, you were boned. So we would get together with each other and have a little copy session. I remember one time, I don't know if they have Captain D's in the UK, but it's a seafood restaurant. We would take over like the whole setting area and just bring computers and stuff in. We would know what the guy we've been in a library, we've been at various people's basements. So it was a thing. It wasn't always just Amiga. Usually we would sort of piggyback on the PC people and kind of get in there that way. But yeah, almost, most of the stuff I had was pirated because I just couldn't find anything else. That's why the demo discs were so great. I mean, you could legally get them, and there was stuff you'd never seen before.
One thing I do remember is kind of people collecting software. So there'd be a race to see who's got the best version of 3D Studio Max or who's got the best version of this, and no one would use it. It would just be for bragging rights, like I've got version 5.8, you know.
Yeah, I have a whole thing of discs back here, and every drawer of that are copies of things, and we would do the same thing, but we lucked out. Bill and I, we had 2 dedicated Commodore stores in White Plains. We had Software Etc., which was part of B. Dalton, a bookstore that sold, and that was like all they sold was software. And they had an Amiga section. Before that, they had a Commodore 64 section. So up until things started falling off, you had places you could buy. So I mean, I bought stuff back then, but you were a student.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have much money, so a lot of stuff I got was also copied. I tried to buy what I really liked. I bought Turbo Silver. I bought Distant Sons. I bought some of the games I really, really loved. But, the rest of it was lots of blank discs at a friend's basement. And again, it's like how much of the stuff, you copied, but you never, it went in the drawer, a new version of Page Setter, not that I desktop publish or anything. So into the drawer it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good way to try out the games or the software before you bought it as well.
Yeah.
Because they're expensive, it's hard to throw down that much money on something that you're not even sure if you're going to like or use.
Right.
A lot of crackers would put underneath, please purchase software if you.
Well, also back then, it's like you pretty much, once you bought a piece of software, a game, say, you brought it home, you opened the box, you tried it out. If it stank, you couldn't bring it back. So that was it. You were stuck with it. Whatever money you laid out. So yeah, you tried to be a little careful.
But something we did share a lot though, and at the user group meetings, was public domain software. That was a big part of the user group meetings. We used to share Fredfish discs. We used to make our own compilations of public domain software and public domain games. We used to have a disc of the month, and every member would come and they get a floppy disk with the greatest stuff that we all found and collected on the internet and collected from the Fredfish collection. So that was a legal way to share Amiga software. I remember they had they also said, this is shareware. If you like it, please send, $5 to so-and-so, and it would give you like a physical address where you would actually mail a check in with your envelope. It was pretty cool.
That was American based, right? Fredfish.
Fred was American based.
So,
yeah. Yes.
Right. Piracy aside, I'm going to go around all of you very quickly, and I just want to know a memory of one piece of software that you legitimately bought that was important to you, game or otherwise. We'll start with Bill. And where did you buy it from as well?
There were quite a few pieces of software that we bought legitimately back then. The first one that comes to mind is Imagine. It was a 3D modeling and rendering program, and I love 3D. It was really, really fantastic to be able to make three-dimensional objects on the screen, and it came with a really beautiful manual as well. Can I say more than just one? Because there's three that I really enjoyed. Yeah. I like so Imagine, the 3D modeling rendering program, had a physical copy of that. I had a physical copy of Deluxe Paint 3 and 4. Deluxe Paint was absolute essential program on the Amiga. And I also had a beautiful box copy of Art Department Professional Ad Pro 2.0. Those were three of the key pieces of software for me. And Scala, box copy of Scala. And I still have all those boxes, and they're all beautiful boxes. Scala, I believe, used to need a dongle for it so that you had to buy it physically. But the other 3D Paint, Ad Pro, and Imagine, I still have my boxes and bought them all legitimately. I subscribed for the upgrades. Whenever the updates came out, I would get the updated version of it as well. Those three pieces of software what made the Amiga for me, because I was a creative type, and that allowed me to make pictures and animations and make titles for all the videos I was creating back then. So those were the key applications for me on the Amiga.
Well, Bill set a very high bar there and a very high budget. They couldn't have been cheap products to buy. I mean, Deluxe Paint may have been pack-ins, perhaps, but those are some expensive products. My only experience of Imagine was, again, going back to those cover discs. I think we've got a demo or maybe an old version on Amiga format. Never truly understood how to use it properly. Let's go across to Anthony. Anthony, what's your choice?
Well, since Bill did 3, I'm doing 3 also, because I will not be beat. And it's also because when I got the 2000, which was really when I started actually having some money, that I could put into this. I picked up 3 pieces of software. One, the funny part is the manual is right around there. It's Turbo Silver. It's the program that predated Imagine by that same company. And it was the program that I saw at AMI Expo when I went that first time with my friend. And they drew a circle on the screen, and the person in the audience who drew it, and they said, well, that's not a circle, that's a sphere. And they showed this ray tracing thing. And I was like, whoa, I got to get an Amiga. So I got that. I got Vista Pro. And I got Distant Suns. And the Distant Suns is an astronomy program. You can actually still get it. I have it on my Android tablet. And Distant Suns, I have a special place in my heart because I got my educational discount 2000, came with a bridge board, came with a 1084 monitor. And the moment I got it, my friend said, oh, too bad you don't have the 1084S. That monitor does PAL. You could play the European games and it won't be cut off. It'll be so awesome because the 2000 auto switches and all this. And I loaded up Distant Suns and I had it render a whole bunch of objects, deep sky objects, and I was still zoomed out. It had nothing to do with what ended up happening, but just happened to be at that moment there was a loud bang, the picture jumped, and the 1084 went dead. It was like a week after I got it. So I always credit Distant Suns with making me able to take that monitor back to the store and say, hey, look, can I get a 1084S instead to replace it? And I'll pay the extra difference in price. And I walked home with a beautiful 1084S monitor, and I was stacked.
Excellent. Vista Pro, I remember setting up scenes on my A500, so it took ages. It wasn't accelerated in any way. I'd set them up in the morning, go to school, and come back and hopefully have 10 frames of animation if I was lucky and just set them looping. But it was mind-blowing seeing that stuff at the time. Amigos, let's go over to you guys.
Well, I'm going to sound like super dumb guy compared to those answers because my thing, I'm games, man. I never did utilities hardly at all. Although Distant Suns I did mess with. It was really cool. I was obsessed with Laserdisc games when I was a kid. When Dragon Slayer came out, when I think it was like 84 or something like 83. And I had told myself that whatever could get this to my house, I would buy. And it was a very instrumental reason in me purchasing that Amiga 1000 for my buddy because I knew that there was a passable version of Dragon Slayer on it. And one of the first things I bought at the local store was Dragon Slayer and Escape from Sensuous Castle and Space Ace, all the Laserdisc games. And I know they're not perfect on the Amiga, and I know they are, have been surpassed since then. But I mean, at the time, it blew my mind that you could play these games at home. And so I'm a sucker for animation, Laserdisc stuff, and those 3 games I bought right away. Those are some of my most treasured items. Ironically, I lost Dragon Slayer. I don't know where it went. I think I lent it out. Never make that mistake. And so I just recently rebought it. So I'm back in action. But those are the ones that come to my mind that I bought. And there weren't a ton that I bought, but I wanted them because they had the awesome Don Bluth art on them. So that was a motivating reason when I bought the actual copies of them.
Yeah, fantastic art, fantastic Don Bluth art. And also a lot of samples made it in there from the arcade as well. Good sound effects. I bought Dragon Slayer at the same time that I bought the 512K Trapdoor RAM expansion. So that was the first game I bought that used it. And you open the game and it kind of folded out again into 12 discs, I think it was. So many floppy disks.
Yes.
Great game. Ravi, did you buy any legitimate games?
Yeah. I actually got really into word processing. That was a thing like later on the Amiga that it was hard to kind of get a decent word processor. So, what was it called? Wordworth 7.
Yeah.
Was it? And it was absolute beautiful piece of kind of word processing software. You could also use rich text format in there, but then there was a program called CrossDOS, which meant that you could put DOS disks into the Amiga. They'd be formatted to a smaller size, but you could actually read the DOS file system on the Amiga, and that was so useful if you were doing essays.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Neil, I've got my art department professional manual right here, and and as you can see, it's a 3-ring binder.
Love
and this was
manuals.
a deterrent to not pirate because, games, I mean, you really don't need the manual for most games, right? But in order to use Ad Pro or Deluxe Paint, you needed the manual. Otherwise, you would have no idea what you were doing. So that was a huge incentive, to not get a pirated copy, because you get a pirated copy, but then you wouldn't know how to use it. Yeah. And I love how it even comes with like the holder for the floppies. I got a little glare on it there, but those are the discs came in the manual, like literally came in the manual. So yeah, this one stays on my shelf and it's near and dear to my heart. The other one that breaks my heart that I don't have it anymore is the Shadow of the Beast physical edition of Shadow of the Beast, because that came with a floppy disk. It came with a beautiful box art. I know like Boat would love it. And the Devil Bunny there by Roger Dean. He did the artwork for the Psygnosis games. And most importantly, it came with a Shadow of the Beast t-shirt, which I think is one of the most coveted collector's items these days.
The important thing is, Bill, could you fit into the t-shirt?
Oh, right. Well, back then I could.
not anymore.
Yeah, but it was
Walker's my favorite Psygnosis game over Shadow of the Beast.
Though. There you go. You heard him.
Wow.
But the Shadow of the Beast t-shirt, yeah, I feel like it's still in my parents' house somewhere, and someday I'll come across it again.
Moth-eaten.
It'll be worth even more by then.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying about the great big manual to deter piracy. I think a title that really stands out for me, and like Devil Bunny down there, like Aaron, I was a big Amiga, a big games player rather than applications. So it was Ultima 6 for me, because it came with the cloth map, it came with the feelies, it came with all the books of lore, and you just couldn't replicate that with piracy. So that was the real standout title for me. Although I could never play it with music because I didn't have a hard disk. So if you had the music on, every time the track changed, you had to swap discs. So I turned the music off so I didn't have to swap discs quite so much. Okay, let's talk about then, as we come towards the end of our Amiga journeys, even though they haven't technically ended, but back in the day when
to say there's no end.
There is no end. There is no end. But when they were no longer our daily drivers, I guess. When did you first start to realize that Commodore and Amiga were going downhill? We'll start again with Bill.
Oh, I remember I started to realize Commodore and Amiga were going downhill when we had discussions at our user group as far as like, should we introduce like PC into our meetings as well, or should we just stay all Amiga? Because not as much was happening in the Amiga scene, and a lot of people were starting to make switch, and we're like, no, we're a good group of friends, but some of us are losing interest in the Amiga, so should we introduce some PC? And there was some like really hardcore debates about it. Some people were like, no way, like no PC in this club ever. Other people were like, I really come here just to socialize with my friends, and I'd love to see some of the new PC stuff coming out. So that was I'll never forget those decisions and battles. And when those conversations started happening, you kind of knew that the writing was on the wall for Amiga, unfortunately. And when games like Descent and Rise of the Triad and Full Throttle were coming out on the PC, and even I think Syndicate, the version of Syndicate on the PC had some really cool cutscenes on the CD version that were amazing. All versions that kind of like overshadowed the Amiga version. It was like, oh man, like it's the end is near.
And Anthony, I guess as part of the same user group, you had a similar experience, did you?
I experienced it earlier because, again, that friend of mine who got me into Amiga, who I got into the 64, he ended up actually working as a regional product demonstrator for Commodore. So he, while not working out of their offices, had a bigger connection with Commodore, and he would, he was saying like, hey, things aren't going very well there. It's not looking good. So I kind of knew ahead of time, but, I kind of wished, you kind of thought it's a big company, even if it goes bankrupt, someone's going to buy it. This is just too big for someone to not do anything with. What you didn't know was that, there were other things in motion. So even so Commodore goes under, and you're kind of still meeting, you're kind of still going to the user group, there's still software coming out, there's still magazines, there's magazines coming over from Europe. So you're kind of like, all right, this will get us through till, whatever happens, someone buys it, and, this is just too big a property just to let go. And then, oh, hey, Gateway buys them, and then it's like, well, okay, nothing's happening, and more nothing's happening, and then ESCOM goes under, and you're just like, you feel punch drunk after a little while. You're just like, oh, what's going to happen next? What could possibly go wrong? And so, yeah, it was, and then, the issue there with the users group was I think those very discussions ended up with some people kind of getting tired of sitting there talking business all the time. They want to sit, again, you want to socialize with your friends. You want to maybe get some information. You don't want to sit there and discuss, are we going to discuss something? And, some people end up wandering away. So the users group starts to diminish. So, yeah, it's amazing that it's kept going after all that, after kind of the beating. It kind of feels like Rocky, you're beaten, you're up against the ropes, so you're kind of like, no, I ain't gonna lay down.
Yeah, but it's a different experience now, isn't it? You're doing it for retro and nostalgic purposes, but back then you were on the cutting edge. You were using this machine with the latest and greatest games, and then it dried up. So,
well, you were. I used it for a long time. I was still using it for email. I was still using it for web with AWeb eyebrows. I think it was pretty late before I got my first PC finally, and it was for, all right, there's no really big new games coming out for the Amiga, but there's all this new 3D games coming out for the PC with these dedicated graphics cards. I have to get a PC finally. And I think it was around when the Riva TNT came out when I finally got my PC and got into PC gaming. But yeah, there's always been an Amiga on my desk, even next to the PC, even then, because I never gave up. I'm one of those nutcases.
Yeah, Neil, that's a really good point about at one time the user group was cutting edge and Amiga was cutting edge, and you kind of see that evolution. Now we're just a bunch of guys kind of reminiscing about the good old days. And although Amiga is, it's revived, man. Like there was a long time when we'd meet in that mall. It's like myself and Anthony and like a total of 5 of us. And now we've got over 30 active members now. So the Amiga's kind of like a phoenix rising from the ashes, and the Amiga scene is looking pretty awesome these days. But yeah, it was incredible back in the day. Like we used to come and we're like, you would walk into that user group meeting and be like, wow, like what am I going to get blown away by this month? And we even had the alpha version of the video toaster there demonstrated by someone from NewTek who came to our club to demo it. And I'll never forget the looks on everyone's faces there when they saw the toaster and Lightwave and doing, real time video switching. It was incredible. Our friend Al was an editor at ABC, and when he saw it, like he literally, like he almost fell out of his chair because he was a professional editor. And he was using systems there that were, $125,000. And here comes the toaster, under 10 grand, and it's making those really expensive professional systems, look bad. It was pretty wild.
It's funny. We went from the users group where you were like, what's going to blow me away? And then we went through the time in the users group where it's like, am I even going to see anything this month? To now it's like, well, it's not going to blow me away, but I'm still going to have a good time. And I'm going to see something new, even if it's not going to blow me away, but it's going to be something new. It's going to be cool.
Yeah, what crazy accelerator or expansion is going to appear this week? Yeah. It's a very interesting time. We'll shoot down to the Amigos, down to Aaron. When did your A500 or A1000 start to gather dust?
Well, I ended up getting an Amiga 1200 somewhere between high school and into college. And so I had moved to work for IBM in '93. I remember this distinctly because I was using my Amiga for all my BBSing and all the stuff I did, gaming and everything. And I'd finally gotten like a 20 meg hard drive for it. I was like, man, this is the ultimate machine. I thought it was the best. But I'd picked up a lot of these European magazines and I saw it was going south. And I had been there when the Coco went south. And I remember I was like, we got to sell this thing now or it's not going to be worth anything. That was my mentality. And so here comes the same thing happening with the Amiga. And it broke my heart. I'll never forget it. But I was super poor, and I was like, I gotta get as much money as I can out of this thing to buy a PC. And I remember selling this thing with the hard drive stacked. It was great. And I ended up getting this crazy lame, PC clone out of Computer Shop and having it delivered to the apartment. I was like, man, it's over. And this thing was so much lamer. But I mean, of course, the PC ended up building up and getting better, yada, yada. But I was always licking my chops to get back to a proper Amiga with the hard drive. And I will say now, having been around for so long, the good thing about being an Amiga owner in 2019 is you could have like the ultimate Amiga you wanted back in the day, and plus 1,000,000% awesome with all the extra stuff that you could get. So, I mean, I feel like it sort of came full circle, but it was a sad day when I boxed that sucker up, I will say.
Yeah. And Ravi, I mean, I think my experience in the UK is probably a little bit more typical than others in that I had the A500, the 1200 and the 600 appeared, and I just looked at it and thought, it's too little too late coming from Commodore. I'm looking at my friends with PCs now starting to play games like Need for Speed and Flight Simulator, and Ultima 7's come out, and it's not coming out on the Amiga, it's only coming out on the PC. So that's when I started to drift away, probably 92, 93. But you clung on in there, didn't you?
Yeah, I kind of clung on in there, but we knew it was dying. When it was around that time, they closed the customer support line in the UK, which was a massive thing. So that was just before the 600 release. And then when they released the 600, it's going crazy. And we totally abandoned the platform. When the CD32 was announced, none of us knew anything about it. Somebody told me in a cattle market, burst out laughing, going, "What? a CD Amiga system? What's going on?" And I think the final nail in the coffin was when we all saw Magic Carpet running on the Pentiums, and it was done by Psygnosis. And that was just, right, our best developers are gone. That was the kind of thing. But I was still running it until 2001 as my main system.
I get the feeling that our experiences aren't so different across the pond. I mean, when it came to the demise of the Amiga and of Commodore, we did have this great hope that Dave Pleasance was going to get hold of the Amiga. If you've read in the chapter in his book, he claims that he had access to all of the sort of next-gen technology, didn't he? And we were perhaps going to see the Ombre chipset and all of these other mystical Amiga things. But sadly, it went to Mediali, didn't it, instead?
Went to ESCOM.
Went to ESCOM and then eventually ended up with Mediali. So I don't know if in the US you were able to follow the trials of Amiga possibly going to Dave Pleasance and all of those stories. Did you get wind of that, or was it just... Yeah. So you were able to follow all of that. Yeah, so...
Well, I don't think they mentioned Pleasance. It was just Commodore UK was looking at being one of the potential purchasers.
Yeah.
That's what I'd heard too.
Well, you guys always sold the idea that Germany was bigger than the UK, because we were always put in competition with each other. Germany versus the UK. That was, at least Germany's doing, it was a very kind of thing. I don't know if that got over to the
Europe was like so abstract to us. We really only heard about UK, I guess maybe with the US, UK connection, but most of our magazines came from the UK. I think all of them came from the UK.
Yep.
We didn't really know anything about the European scene outside of the UK.
Yeah, I think the language thing, you knew about Commodore UK, but even though Commodore apparently had a big production facility in Germany, I knew nothing about any Commodore being anywhere else in Europe.
Because kind of we focused a bit on, later on, the news was all coming out of Germany. So we were kind of starting to shift a bit towards Germany. And now we find out that the UK model was actually more profitable. So it's a bit odd. Yeah.
I guess the only real thing I was expecting to hear from this chat was in the UK, we were more mainstream. In the US, did you feel like you were a bit more underground, a bit more sort of elite? Yeah, there's some wry smiles there.
Absolutely. I mean, very few people have. I mean, to this day, they don't know anything about the Amiga. They don't know where it's been here. I had tons of friends that had C64s, but I only knew a couple people that had Amigas. So,
and all the time that we've been doing the 5 years we've been doing the show, when somebody asks you, what's your podcast about? And you say the Amiga, have you gotten anything other than a blank stare?
Yeah, exactly. They have no idea what I'm talking about. So, yeah. But it makes it feel kind of cool.
It's funny because you say Amiga, a personal blank stare at you. But then if you say Commodore, oh, the 64, everyone
Right.
knows that machine.
Absolutely.
Or the
Absolutely.
VIC-20, you know.
Nobody says the VIC
No,
20.
some people like the VIC.
Don't give me a break.
So you still get to enjoy the pleasure of actually showing people Amigas for the first time and sort of wowing them.
I did back in the day, and I still do. I love firing it up. When you played someone an Amiga back in the late 80s and 90s, they were like, just like I was when I saw it, just like, I can't believe I'm seeing this. You know, why is it failing? It just to drive me nuts. How are we losing? We're the best. You know, but they sucked at market here bad.
Yeah. And the community, as Bill mentioned, is now thriving. We've got so much going on. A great group that I love to go to is the Southwest Amiga group here in the UK. That's down near Bristol, and that's just growing and growing and growing. I think they're going to need a bigger hall soon. It's just becoming so popular. Tell us about your group, Bill, the Westchester Amiga group. So how many people have you got coming to see you now, and is it on the up?
Oh, definitely. You know, during the dark ages, like I said, it was like Anthony and I and maybe 3 other people meeting in a shopping mall once a month. And, you know, we kept it going. Like we were still kind of into Amiga, but we were friends. So it was a good excuse to get together and hang out. But now with the resurgence of Amiga and, you know, retro becoming popular, we're getting new members like every month. It's pretty incredible. So we meet on the first Thursday of every month in a mall. It's kind of like our general meeting. And we're getting new people all the time. We have about over 30 active members now. But then we also do the special meetings, which are the ones that are much bigger and even more fun. Like I'll host them at my house, and we'll set up real Amigas, and we'll have a good old party. We'll set up some other machines, like some Commodore 64s, some Atari 8-bit stuff, and those meetings are a blast. Now, back in the day, we had our general meeting on the first Thursday of every month, and there was like so much interest in Amiga. We had what were called special interest groups. So the main meeting was at the Commodore store on the first Thursday of the month. And then we would have like a graphics and video special interest group that would meet at my house. We had a desktop publishing special interest group that would meet at my buddy's Chris's house. And he also had a music special interest group that met at Chris's house. And we had a programming special interest group that met at Scott's house. So if you were just into like a niche part of Amiga, you had a special group. The main ones were like music, graphics, video, and desktop publishing. And then, of course, we'd have our games party like we still do to this day. But it's amazing to see new people coming to the meetings. It's wild. And now with the internet and, you know, YouTube and Twitch, like I'm meeting new people all the time. And being that it's in New York, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to find other people who are into Amiga these days, and they might actually be physically close to you and can come to an actual meeting.
Excellent. And where can they find out more information on your user group?
That's a great question. I do a lot of stuff with Amiga, and the user group needs its own website, so that's what I'm going to work on. But they can just contact me directly, you know, on any of my social media platforms. In my Discord channel, they can hit me up on Twitter. They can hit me up on Facebook.
Well, thank you, gents. It's been a really interesting conversation today to get a US perspective. Amigans the world over, I think. We have our minor differences, but we're all part of the same family, I think. And appreciate your time today. We'll just get a round robin to remind us where we can find you, starting with the Amigos. Where do we need to go to watch you guys?
You can find us on our YouTube channel is Amigos Retro Gaming, or you can subscribe to any of our podcasts. We've got Amigos Everything Amiga, which is a weekly Amiga podcast, Our Sinclair, which is an American take on the ZX Spectrum, and finally our newest show, The Coco Show, all about the TRS-80 color computer.
Perfect. Notice that he said ZX and not ZX. These guys know what they're
I've
doing.
learned.
These guys know.
I've learned.
I am disappointed.
and Anthony, where should we go to find you and Bill?
Well, obviously the Guru Meditation. You can just search YouTube for Guru Meditation, gurumeditation.org. I'm trying to hopefully maybe I met one guy down here before I moved. I've actually moved out of New York. I'm in Florida now. And the first thing I did was meet someone down here who has Amigas and Commodores, who lives right near me. So I'm thinking there might be some other hidden secret Commodore Amiga people down here hiding out who want to come out of the woodwork. So we're thinking of starting a WOG South down here.
Okay.
We're going to see what happens. Going to put some feelers out, see if we can flush them out. maybe toss some floppy disks and some mouse cables and see if they come out. So as I always like to say in our videos, we'll see you on the next episode of the Guru Meditation.
Excellent. Yeah. And Bill, professionally, is you're a cameraman, is that right? Or a director of photography?
Director of photography / cinematographer, yes.
And that really comes through in the Guru Meditations videos. They're really, really nicely put together videos. And then more frequently, the lovely Twitch streaming that you do as well. So well worth checking all these guys out. And Ravi, of course, the Retro Hour podcast. And more recently, a weekly 8-bit mix using Amigas, DJing with Amigas.
8bitmix.com.
8bitmix.com. So check them all out. Thank you, guys. And take care. Bye-bye. If you enjoy my content and would like to support The Cave while receiving a completely ad-free experience and access to releases 1 week before they go public, then visit patreon.com/retromancave and join the official Cave Dwellers. Thank you for your support.